When people hear the name Vincent van Gogh, they immediately picture swirling skies, glowing stars, vibrant sunflowers, and bold brushstrokes that seem almost alive. He is remembered as one of the greatest artists in history, a lonely genius whose paintings continue to inspire millions around the world. But what if I told you that before Van Gogh became Van Gogh, there was another artist who completely changed the way he saw the world? An artist whose name isn't nearly as famous today, yet whose influence shaped one of history's greatest painters. That artist was Jean-François Millet. Without Millet, the Van Gogh we admire today might never have existed. Jean-François Millet was born into a farming family in Normandy, France in 1814. Unlike many painters of his time, he didn't grow up surrounded by wealth, nobility, or luxury. He grew up among fields, soil, and hardworking farmers. He knew what it meant to wake before sunrise, to work under harsh weather, and to depend on the land for survival. When Millet became an artist, he didn't choose to paint kings, queens, or wealthy aristocrats as many artists did. Instead, he turned his attention toward ordinary people, the farmers who planted seeds, the woodcutters chopping trees, the women gathering crops, and the laborers whose exhausting work kept society alive. At the time, many critics dismissed these paintings. They questioned why anyone would want to paint poor peasants instead of glamorous subjects. But Millet saw something different. He believed that honest labor carried a quiet dignity and that the everyday lives of ordinary people deserved to be remembered with the same respect given to royalty. Years later, a young Dutch man named Vincent van Gogh discovered Millet's paintings. At that point, Van Gogh was far from the celebrated artist we know today. He struggled financially, doubted himself constantly, and searched desperately for purpose in both life and art. He wanted his paintings to express deep human emotion, but he hadn't yet found the artistic language to do it. Then he encountered Millet's work, and everything changed. Van Gogh wasn't simply impressed by the paintings, he felt understood by them. He once described Millet as more than just an artist. He believed Millet painted humanity itself. To Van Gogh, these farmers weren't anonymous workers. They represented resilience, faith, sacrifice, hope, and the quiet strength of ordinary people. He admired Millet so deeply that he referred to him as one of the greatest artistic influences of his life. What many people don't realize is that Van Gogh spent years copying Millet's compositions. Today, the word copying often sounds negative, as though an artist lacks originality. But for Van Gogh, copying was never about imitation, it was about learning. He believed that recreating Millet's works allowed him to understand not only the composition, but also the emotion hidden within each painting. It was his way of studying the soul behind the artwork. Take the Woodcutter, for example. Millet painted a man chopping wood using soft, earthy colors and realistic details that reflected the quiet rhythm of rural life. When Van Gogh recreated the same subject, he kept the basic pose and composition, but transformed the painting entirely through his own artistic vision. The muted browns became vibrant blues and greens, the brushstrokes became energetic and expressive, and the entire scene seemed to pulse with life. It was no longer simply a man chopping wood, it became a celebration of human effort and perseverance. The same transformation can be seen in the Sower. Millet's original painting depicts a farmer scattering seeds across a field beneath a glowing sunset. It is calm, balanced, and deeply symbolic, representing the timeless cycle of life and harvest. Van Gogh embraced the same composition but infused it with brilliant yellows, rich purples, and dynamic brushstrokes that almost make the painting move before your eyes. The setting sun became brighter, the fields more vibrant, and the figure more powerful. Millet showed reality. Van Gogh added emotion. One painted what he saw, while the other painted what he felt. Even Van Gogh's fascination with the night sky may have roots in Millet's influence. Millet painted peaceful evening landscapes filled with quiet darkness and subtle beauty. Van Gogh carried that same appreciation into works like Starry Night over the Rhone, where the calm night transforms into something magical. The stars shimmer with life, The reflections dance across the water, and the entire scene feels filled with hope and wonder. While the style is unmistakably Van Gogh's, the desire to find beauty in ordinary moments echoes Millet's philosophy. Millet's greatest influence on Van Gogh wasn't simply his subjects, it was his way of seeing the world. He believed that beauty wasn't reserved for palaces or wealthy families. Beauty could be found in a farmer planting seeds, a laborer resting after a long day, or a couple walking quietly through the countryside. He taught that ordinary lives were worthy of extraordinary attention. Van Gogh carried this lesson throughout his career. Whether he painted a simple chair, a pair of worn shoes, a field of wheat, or a vase of sunflowers, he approached every subject with the same belief, that the ordinary could become extraordinary when seen with compassion and honesty. Perhaps this is why Van Gogh's paintings continue to touch people across generations. Beneath the bold colors and swirling brushstrokes lies an idea first nurtured by Millet, that art isn't only about beauty, but about humanity. It reminds us to slow down, to notice the dignity in everyday life, and to recognize the quiet heroism of ordinary people. Today, Van Gogh is one of the most celebrated artists in history, while Millet is often remembered only by art lovers and historians. Yet every great artist stands on the shoulders of those who came before them. Behind Van Gogh's unforgettable masterpieces stands the quiet influence of Jean-François Millet, a man who believed that farmers deserved the same respect as kings, and that simple moments could carry profound meaning. Sometimes history remembers the student more than the teacher, but perhaps the greatest legacy an artist can leave is not just a masterpiece, it is inspiring another artist to change the world. Van Gogh gave the world unforgettable colors, but it was Millet who first taught him where to look.